Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Pietrandrea Hough for After Magazine, and I'm here with Robbie Shaw from Champagne Problems, the popular recovery podcast, now a wellness podcast as well. Robbie is a person who is in recovery and is also a recovery coach and works in crisis management and also has a master's degree in clinical mental health. And we're very happy to have you here today and to have you on the cover of this next issue.
Oh my God, Nicole, I'm honored. I'm truly honored you asked me to do this. The two before me, I hold in high regard. So I'm thank you so much.
We've had three awesome people in a row, and it's an honor for me too. So let's get into your story a little bit. We're going to talk about like
Yay.
things, and yes,
Let's do it. Let's
yes,
dig.
let's do it. Can you tell us your story, addiction and recovery, and how you got on the road to all the things you're doing?
Oh my
Wow.
goodness. All right. So the highlights, or else we'd be here for hours.
Right.
You know, let's do the very beginning. The very beginning was when I was 12, or probably even before that, where I grew up in a household that suffered from addiction. My father was an alcoholic, a very active, functioning alcoholic throughout the majority of my childhood. He was also a pretty successful man, and those two things together created an interesting environment. It was toxic, yet it was very beautiful.
Mm.
So you paint the pretty picture, and then behind closed doors, it was a little ugly. Nothing too crazy. I don't ever bash my childhood. I truly had a great childhood. I had a lot of opportunity. My mom and dad did the best they could. My mom is very loving and kind of came from nothing, and then married a man who worked his way up and did well, and all of a sudden they're highfalutin in the South and making money and good looking and all this stuff, and what comes with that is some torture, really. I mean, you hear it a lot in kind of the celebrity world. How do you deal with, not that they were famous, but in their own little relative space they were. And it just came with some ugly stuff, and so that I kind of grew up in that environment, which was fairly inconsistent. um Priorities and things that were held value, now in later life, I don't necessarily subscribe to or agree with. So I tried drinking at 12 years old in sixth grade. I think I had like three quarters of a beer or something like that, and I felt it, no question. I vividly remember riding my bike down a hill in my neighborhood and looking up at the sky and seeing the street light and thinking, "Holy cow, this is great." And I mean, I felt it. It felt good. And it wasn't one of those things where I was like, all right, I got to drink tomorrow, but it lit me up.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of somewhat off to the races after that. I mean, that was sixth grade, so
Oh my
you're
God.
not really in many settings that are conducive for that. But throughout junior high and high school, weed, little acid, lot of drinking. I was an athlete. That just the high competitiveness, the stress, the pressure, the work hard, play hard kind of mentality.
Mhm.
And everything was okay. That was normal. That was normal in most places across the country, or even the world. But in America and in the South, I mean, you see it in movies. It was that. It was a lot of fun, a lot of tomfoolery, a lot of playing around with my guy friends and running around chasing girls and all that kind of stuff. Everything was fun. And then college, I played basketball in college, and it began to get a little heavier there,
Mhm.
obviously. But when I say there, more my freshman year, basketball began to take a back seat, and partying and having fun became more of a preference and a priority for me. And
Mhm.
it began to catch up with me, I'd say somewhere around the end of my freshman year, where grades started falling, wasn't caring as much about basketball. A relationship was getting a little rocky. And then the summer happens, and I go on a Knowles trip, a National Outdoor Leadership School trip. This is going to be great for you. You're going to come back all empowered, and I did, and it lasted about 3 days. And I was ready to get back at it when I got home, and went straight to the beach and met all my friends. And then my sophomore year, I was in a relationship with an older girl that I would consider my first love. Virginity, like the whole thing. Like, she was older, I was young, like got the older attractive girl. Everybody was, whatever, all that BS. And then I blew up the relationship because of my use.
Right.
I started doing cocaine, summer, or actually it was the night before I went on that Knowles trip. I did it for the first time, and for 45 days out in the wilderness, I couldn't wait to get back and do it again.
Wow.
And so I started doing that my sophomore year, and that broke up the relationship. And the relationship was the first time that I truly got punched in the gut. I was one of these kids that I wasn't, I mean, sure, I was entitled, and I certainly was given a lot. But I wasn't can I cuss?
Yeah, that's fine.
I wasn't an asshole.
Right.
I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't mean. I had no enemies. I had all friends. I wasn't that kind of guy. So things typically kind of worked out for me. I was popular and people liked me. And then all of a sudden I lost this girlfriend and I couldn't get her back. And it was the beginning of everything for me. I mean, I think at some point in my life, something would have happened to trigger some addiction in me. But this was what it was. My sophomore year, when I was 20 years old, and
Wow.
anxiety for the first time began to creep into my life. And it was ugly. It was panic attacks, panic disorder, throwing up in public, not being able to eat for days. The only thing that would make it go away was alcohol. And I started that pattern when I was 20.
Mm.
And, you know, so from 20, so I stopped drinking and entered recovery when I was 29. So from 20 to 29, those 9 years are probably a pretty typical story that people have heard many, many times. Lots of
Mhm.
trouble, in and out of jail. I mean, not long stints, but like DUI after DUI, job loss, no money. Friends began to worry, family began to worry, in and out of treatments. I moved up to New York City after I graduated college. And, a lot of people early on thought that was a terrible decision because New York was, I mean, Manhattan is Manhattan. And good Lord, it was a blast. But instead of looking at it as a bad decision and why would you throw someone into the lion's den, it was the silver lining is that it fast tracked my recovery. No question. I mean, I went and hit a
Mm.
rock bottom much, much quicker than I would have if I were still kind of floundering around somewhere else. It would have just been prolonged. So there's the silver lining of Manhattan, and all the accessibility and opportunity there for partying.
Right.
So I entered recovery at 29, and quit drinking. Haven't had a sip in, it's coming up on 18 years. Um, I hold that very, very close to my heart. Alcohol is, hence champagne problems being very centered around alcohol. Alcohol was always my family and my Achilles heel. It was just always, it was my dad's, it was, other family members. I lost a couple of cousins to car crashes and overdose and just ugly stuff that all stemmed from alcohol. And so the fact that I haven't had a sip in 18 years, I am extremely proud of.
Wonderful.
Um, Now, I preface with that because I have had other issues as well. Marijuana has always crept back into my life here and there.
I'm wondering, do you think there are special challenges when someone realizes at the young age, like a sophomore in college, that they have a problem? I feel like the general culture is that everyone around you is like, oh, you're just a normal college student. That's what we do.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Number one, definitely. Number two, definitely back then.
Mm.
I would say a little less now. I think people are a little more privy to it now. There's more education, there's more info, knowledge. People are more aware of what it looks like to be addicted, and of course, the wellness world is really just entrenched in these new generations, and it's a wonderful thing. So I think people are attacking it earlier.
Mm.
Um, but I agree. When you're young and you're having fun, and you're the kind of guy I was, where it's like the world is your oyster, you're cloud nine. I mean, having so much fun. You can't imagine giving that up. no matter what some of the consequences are, or at least I couldn't.
Right. Like, where else would you turn?
God, it's all I knew. It was all my friends. It was my identity. It was everything.
I get that. That's yeah. I try to look back at those years and be like, it was fun, and it's okay to say it was fun.
It was fun. And would I give it up? I don't know. I don't know if I would give it up. There was a lot that I would wish didn't happen, but man, the good times were really, really fun.
Right. There's the bad with the good, but
and the bad outweighed the good very, very quickly. But
right. So 29. And then at what point did you go into mental health and recovery?
Yeah. So right after I came out of my final treatment and was very clear that I was going to, never drink again and never use hard drugs and that kind of stuff. I automatically said, I didn't have much to show for. I mean, I did live in New York and I worked a couple of, like a Wall Street job, and I did another couple of startups, but I didn't have much of an identity. I didn't know who I was. It was always riddled with just the haze of drinking and drugging. So like, I didn't really know who I was, and whoever I was, I didn't really like. So it was a clean slate when I came out at 29, and I thought, what else do I know than what I've been doing for, a decade? So why don't I go into mental health? And I took some prerequisites and applied to, an accredited school up in Maine. My now wife was doing her residency in Portland, Maine, and I applied to University of Southern Maine for clinical mental health counseling. And 2 years later, I'm graduating with a 4.0 after I'd failed out of college 3 times. And that was my path. And then we had our daughter. And because my wife was on her way to being a physician, I, by default, became a stay-at-home parent. And so I put my career on hold for about 5 or 6 years and ending up taking a different path. So after 5 or 6 years, I came back and didn't really want to be a therapist. I didn't want to sit in an office. And so coaching was becoming kind of the new thing. And you kept hearing the word coaches, and I had heard life coach and career coach before, but I had not heard recovery or sobriety coach. And then that started credentialing around that, and training around that started cropping up. And I said, I think that's my calling. I want to do that. That means I can do whatever I want. Ultimately, what I was looking to do was more in the crisis space, more in the, oh my God, what do I do? My husband is on the floor with, a cracked head open. What do I do? My son hasn't come home in 3 days. Can you find him? Where is he? Whatever those situations are, for some reason, I'm drawn to them.
Amazing.
It's I like to clarify. I don't like it. It's not fun. I'm just good. I'm kind of good at it, and I'm a little comfortable in the chaos.
Right. Well, I think it takes a special person to do that kind of work to even know where to begin.
Well, it just came by, trial and error. I mean, somebody calls with that kind of situation, and it's like, okay, relax, or not relax, but remain calm. Deep breaths. I'll be there in a minute. We'll figure this out. Got a couple people I can call to get guidance from, and all they need in that moment is someone who's calm. And I might not be calm on the inside, but I can play calm on the outside, and that is what they need. The interesting piece of that, whether it's someone who's battling it themselves or it's a loved one or a friend, is they feel helpless, and that helplessness is what I love to be a solution to. I love to provide some level of calm and some level of hope, and let these people know that they're not alone. Number one, and number two, there is hope, and there's a way out of this. I promise. There's always a way out, and helping someone recognize that is what lights me up. And when they realize that they're not alone, I mean, it often takes a minute, or even more time than that. But when that acceptance and that recognition and that awareness kind of comes over them, you can almost see the weight lifted. It's like a face like this just comes up a little bit, and it just kind of lights. It's like, all right, now we got something to work with here. Like when you're at your worst or your bottom, I mean, you are alone. You feel secluded. You feel helpless. You feel often like there's no other option.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Giving
yeah.
people hope is a big deal.
Yeah, it is. Now, everything that comes after that, that's a whole nother ball of wax.
Right. So where
But it
does
has to start
your
with hope.
and your relationship ends, like you get them to the next step after an acute
Yeah,
episode?
if it's that level of crisis, absolutely. I mean, they need to get centered again and figure out lots of things. Now, sustainability of sobriety, that's a lot of the coaching I do. I do
Mm,
kind of both ends. I like to help people recognize what they need, and then they go get it, and then when they come back, I like to help them sustain.
okay.
Yeah. The
Right.
middle stuff is the therapy stuff that I kind of decided not to do.
Right. Right. Okay. So we outsource that. That makes so much sense though. That really is, those are the three steps of the journey, really.
Sure, sure.
Put it that
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
And then the last one goes on forever. There's no end.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if
Yeah.
someone is in crisis, I mean, you're one person in one city. What are there other people like you, or how would someone find this kind of help?
There are people like me for sure. If someone is in crisis mode, obviously if it's the individual who's feels like they're down and out and about to, something is about to happen, safety is an issue, 911, crisis hotlines, all those things. But if it's a loved one or a friend who's concerned about another one and is just doesn't know what to do and is like, call someone and tell me what to do. Call an interventionist. Google interventionist near me, Google substance abuse therapist near me. And if you need a therapist and are trying to kind of, you know, apply a criteria and figure out who's going to be good for you, then go to Psychology Today. Psychology Today is a fantastic resource.
That's great, because I don't know if I would have known where to turn exactly. So I'm kind of jumping to a totally different topic, but you mentioned that you had separate issues from alcohol with marijuana, and then you told me in our last conversation that you considered that a relapse, that you had a relapse after 18 years or a little less. Can you talk about that? Because I think the marijuana topic is an interesting one. There's a lot of different opinions about where does that fall in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
addiction spectrum.
I'm happy to talk about that. And I'm happy to be a politician as I talk about it.
All right.
Well, like you said, there's just so many, everybody's got an opinion around it. And I get that because everybody's situation is different. We all want to simplify it. We want to know what's the cause. There are so many factors, so many factors individually, genetically, biologically, and then externally. Like it's impossible to simplify for this stuff. So, preface with that. So, my opinion on marijuana, it's highly addictive. To deny that is a disservice. Anything that makes you feel that good. I mean, shit, excuse me. So if food is addictive, if gambling is addictive, if playing cards is addictive, then marijuana is addictive. So stop saying it's not addictive. People do that all the time. I was highly addicted to it, like wake up and can't function without it kind of addiction. So now, most people who have the opinion or the leniency or the argument for it hold on to a little bit of a harm reduction kind of mentality. Like it's just less harmful than everything else. Now, of course, I can go into why it is harmful, but that's not what we're talking about. We are comparing it to everything else. Compare it to alcohol, compare it to, of course, any hard drugs, illegal drugs. It is less harmful. It just is. And so that's okay. Now, if you can handle it and it's not, and that's up to the individual. I mean, if it's, like for me early on, it made me lazy. I mean, it made my brain spin and I was the genius in the moment. When I was high for 45 minutes, I could come up with every grand idea in the world and execute on zero of it. I wouldn't go to class because I would get caught up in doing something else. That's what it did. But I loved that. I loved that piece of it. Now, it didn't affect me that much early on in life. If I were doing that now, oh my God, I couldn't hold a job. My relationships would be all screwed up. Like I can't do it. So it really is down to the individual on if it's causing issues for you or not. That I can't determine that for people. Now, if we enter over into the sobriety piece, and the California sober stuff. There is a definition of the word sober. And I subscribe to the definition of mind altering substances, not in the, everybody's like, well, then caffeine is one and then nicotine is one. Well, caffeine and nicotine don't give you a euphoric high. They don't change the mood chemicals in your brain to make you see things lighter and happier and more positive. They may make you feel good in the moment, and that might shift some stuff in your brain, but it doesn't do it chemically. So drugs that do that, I think you're not so sober if you're doing them.
Okay.
Now, I'm so if you're walking around saying I'm sober, but you're high off of high powered marijuana all day long, I have trouble calling you sober. Now, if you want to say you're in recovery from alcohol and you're still smoking weed, that's what I used to say. That was kind of my thing. I didn't use the word sober. I said I'm in recovery. That kind of left the word sober out. And so, yeah, I'm a harm reduction. Yeah, exactly. So I'm hoping that answers your question. It's just, I personally don't think you're by definition sober if you're smoking marijuana. Doesn't mean that's bad. It doesn't mean that. It just means you're kind of discrediting all the people that actually are fully sober.
And there is a term. The California sober is the term for that. So maybe that's a more accurate, like sober is sober. This is not sober.
Yeah. Or just call it marijuana sober.
Marijuana sober.
I mean, call it a different mood altering substance sober.
Right.
I don't know why California is. That's just.
I don't know what's going on in California. Well, I do know.
The street term. Well, now California means you can eat mushrooms too. Like right. You can eat. I mean, how many people end up in the emergency room from too much mushrooms? Lots, and marijuana. You eat too much of a gummy. You eat too much of an edible. You feel like you're dying. You're scared to death. You end up in the emergency room. Like, that's not sober to me.
Right. You're sober to not be in that situation. Things,
right. Now, and I don't like pissing people off, and I understand that everybody has their own situation, and if that works for you, then that works for you, and I am happy for you. If you're not drinking or doing coke or heroin, and you're just eating marijuana or smoking marijuana, and that works for you, then more power to you. More power to you. Just maybe don't call yourself sober.
Right. There's a lot of merit to this. I mean, I think even alcohol, which we all know alcohol is addictive, but you're still not an addict unless it's affecting you in a certain way. What's the role it's playing in your life? Is it filling a void? Are you able to stop? Those are the questions really that
it is. And often people say the word addiction is continuing doing something despite negative consequences. And I mean, of course, if you get someone who argues really well, they can figure out a way around that. But that was kind of the general way that I always looked at addiction and still do is if I say I'm not going to do it and then I do, which means I don't have control. When I start, I can't. It's not that I can't stop. It's that I don't. I just keep on going, even though I know that I got something to do the next day and it's going to affect me in some way, shape, or form. I mean, that's all the addict stuff.
I think one of the best things about being sober is being honest with yourself and following through with yourself on your promises. Like I said, I'm going to do it and I didn't do it. There's so much. I spent a lot of time myself saying, I don't want to drink anymore, but I did it anyway. Because I couldn't stop. Yeah.
That's right. And man, there is something to doing what you say you're going to do and not saying it out loud, but here, like, I mean, that self-discipline, holy cow, what a powerful thing. I don't, do you know Jocko? I think his last name's like Willenick or something like that. He was a former Navy SEAL and he's written many books on self-discipline. And one of them is called like Discipline Equals Freedom. And it's just so good. It makes so much sense. When you want to do something, if you say I want to stop eating gluten, say I want to start running 3 miles every 3 days a week. And when you do those things you say you're going to do, despite not wanting to do them, woo, man, there's some empowerment there.
That's true. You're unstoppable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the confidence boost that comes with that is enormous.
Oh, and the confidence boost eliminates for me anxiety. I mean, just for
Mhm.
me, like anxiety's always been a thing for me. It's nerves to the point of feeling it all over my body, and sometimes feeling ill and a little panicked and, oh God, is this going to escalate? Like when
Right.
I do those things that I don't want to do, a lot of it has to do around exercise and some sort of intentional kind of suffering, maybe an ice bath or something. When I do those
Well,
things,
my things
man,
I don't
no anxiety.
like. I wrote this in the last issue, actually. My ice therapy is going outside in the freezing cold every day in the winter.
Yeah, totally.
I hate it, but it's good for you.
It is good.
Um,
It is.
there's always the next thing along the lines.
That's right.
Push
That's right.
yourself. I'm gonna read that book. I'll link to that book too. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is a good one.
So let's talk about champagne problems.
Okay.
Founder and co-host, is that correct?
Founder, yeah, yeah. I mean, do you want to know like the inception or where we are
Sure.
now? Like what would you like to know?
A little of it, yeah. Inception quickly, and then what's going on. Like, so I know you've accomplished a lot in the recovery space there, and
Yeah.
let's yeah.
Like I said before, alcohol was always a major factor in my life, major influence in my life, to the point where a lot of turmoil, a lot of things that I still go to therapy for are stemming from alcohol. And now, like they
Mhm.
say, alcohol is a symptom, and we, all the other problems. But either way, if alcohol wasn't there, a lot, people wouldn't have died. Um, Plenty of people in this world who are activists around specific areas have a personal tie to what that is, and that is me. I have a personal tie to alcohol creating destruction in lives, and that's what I'm passionate about, especially after working in this field for the time that I did, and the time that I have. I see all of this unnecessary suffering. I see families broken apart. I see kids who have an absent parent. I see just a bunch of junk that is being overlooked, is being denied, is coined as normal, and it drives me insane. So I decided I wanted to write a book, and I was going to like just regurgitate like everything I know about alcohol and try to write it in this way that's like, hey, everybody, you should know this. I'm not pointing my finger. I just want you to know this, and it might help you.
Your
And
friend.
right, exactly. And so I was telling somebody about it, and I tried to do it, and it was just very hard for me. It's hard for me to focus like that. I'm a little more, as you can tell, probably a little more out there, and I have ideas, and I'm all over the place. Like to hunker down and write. Woo, that's hard for me. So somebody was like, do a podcast. Like you can get the same information out, you can reach wider range of people, and you can
Mhm.
change it as you go and all these things. And so I was like, bam, click, let's do it. And I had this
Mhm.
idea. I mean, it started as like wanting to set up my phone against like a book with a buddy of mine, and then of course it morphed into, all right, how about we reach out to some people that know what they're doing to help us with this. And we started a little more in the professional space, where we were in a studio, and we had some Chris Herron was our first really big guest, who was a former NBA basketball player,
Mhm.
30 for 30 on him. A lot of people know who he is in the sports world, and he battled heroin addiction severely, and he came on like as our second guest. And I mean, having him on one good guest leads to another. And so, and
Mhm.
that's how it worked. And we ended up getting Gabby Reese on, Laird Hamilton's wife, and then she led to somebody else. And then it just evolved from there. We're not the biggest and best podcast in the world, but we've got a good, solid, loyal following, and we've got a bunch of good content and a bunch of great guests.
Mhm.
Um, like I said, it started with the mission of educating people on alcohol, and we did that by talking about it through a wellness lens. We wanted to not talk about it through an addiction lens, because we
Mhm.
know that there's plenty of people out there that are going to see that in the title and description and go, that's not for me. But if you talk
Mhm.
about it from a wellness space, and it's, how is it affecting me? It's not about if you drink too much or anything. If you drink one glass of wine a week, what does that do to you? Does
Mhm.
it affect your sleep that one night? Does that one night of sleep affect your caffeine intake the next day? Does that affect your work uh, production in the afternoon the following day? Does that make you want to drink that night? All those things. We just wanted to include everybody. Um, not because everybody drinks, but because everybody either drinks or knows someone that drinks. And we're all connected to that substance in some way, shape, or form. And that was kind of our mission going at it from the very beginning. And it worked. A lot of people listened.
Our mission is also like, that was the reason for having a print magazine, is we want to be out there in the world for people who would not maybe necessarily identify as an alcoholic, but whose lives would be so much improved by knowing this information, or who might be kind of curious, like, I don't feel great, but like everyone around them is drinking and everyone around them is telling them they're fine. So what do you do? And you have to be so careful not to go too far, too radical, scare them all away. Then they just run away. I think you've done a really good job of doing that.
Well, thank you. That certainly was, we were very aware of that going in, and that probably just comes from personal, touch points in the industry that I work in. I mean, you figure out what works and what doesn't, what people are receptive to, and that's kind of how we went about it. So, fast forward to, I don't know, a couple months ago, we felt like we were doing so much discussion in the wellness kind of, I like to call it well-being, because it feels more it includes kind of everything. So we were talking about so much stuff in the well-being space, the sleep, the nutrition, the exercise, like all the stuff that content is endless, and to talk about it, through the lens of how alcohol influences that stuff kind of became repetitive. We covered all that stuff. If you want to hear it, go back and listen. It's all there. Every bit of it is there.
80 episodes?
90. Yeah, we're up to 90 now. Yep. Great. And so now we're really just talking a lot about wellness and well-being. It's just best practices in all the areas: the mental health, the sleep, the work performance, the relationships, nutrition, physical exertion. All of it's tied together. And of course we include alcohol in those conversations too, but we include anything that's a detriment to that stuff. So that's where we are now. And we're taking a little break for November and December, and then we're going to come back in 2024 with a rebrand and a new big sponsor we've got, and some big guests that are going to come out. So we're really excited to start announcing that stuff.
That's exciting. I love this. I love that it's, it's been a natural progression. And all the things, I mean, the magazine also has ended up being, I don't mean to keep bringing it back to the magazine, but it's...
No, let's push it.
Yeah, let's talk about the magazine for the rest
Ask me a couple questions about the magazine.
Exactly. It ends up being a lot of this, it's almost hard to weave alcohol into the articles. Like, it's like, this is actually more important. Who are you, and how are you taking care of yourself, and how are you looking at your past trauma, and how are you going forward with mental health? And like, if you address all of those things, then the recovery becomes so much easier. If you're just focused on, this is my recovery and I have to not drink, and that's the only thing you're looking at, that's the hardest possible way to do it. You need all those things. Yeah,
you're not working on the things that are creating the desire to drink. Right. So
otherwise you just so much harder. The desire to drink, and you can't.
Right.
We talked a little bit about, like, you give up alcohol, you work in the space, and suddenly your whole personality becomes not drinking. So how is that shifting for you? Is that...
Yeah, that's kind of a new thing for me. And we did talk about this, and I've been I've tried to work through it lately on what I mean by that and how I would like to vocalize that, because I still, like it or not, my identity is not wrapped up, but there's a highlight of sobriety in there. And that is a part of my life I'm proud of. No question. Not because I had such a troubled past, but because I'm living a life of positivity and health consciousness, and, the things that are required to live a hearty and healthy and content life. I'm doing that now. And I feel like, I often say this to people, like, I don't get to have a glass of wine after a tough month or obviously a tough day, but like, I don't get to eat a gummy. Like, there's zero artificial relief.
Mm-hmm.
And That's tough. When you live, of course, I can eat a big chocolate cake or something like that, but it's a little different. It feels good going down, but it doesn't create some sort of relief in my head like an artificial, mood altering substance does. So I'm very proud of that. So I'll never give that up as part of my identity. But as I move forward in a professional sense, I have shifted a little bit into what you see behind me is a brand new studio. And we decided, you know, I don't know, 6 months, maybe 7 or 8 months ago to leave our old studio, not for any reason other than that we just wanted to peel off. They were great. And create our own space. And in doing that, we recognized the demand in my specific area, which is Charlotte, North Carolina, for podcasting and content development. There are people and organizations and practices and all kinds of people that are in restaurants and that are creating this content to tell their story, to build trust, to gain clients. Obviously, it's a marketing tool that are everywhere. And there's not really a service like that around here. There may be one or two, but not one that kind of meets in the middle of podcasting and content. So it just kind of comes in the middle. And so I created this studio now that is a brand new business. And I just wanted to leave the Robbie Shaw, the sober guy, Robbie Shaw, the sober coach, Robbie Shaw, the alcohol expert. Like I just wanted to kind of get that out of my tagline. Again, still proud of it, but I'm ready to move on a little bit from that.
I love how, this makes me happy in my own life too, when there's a natural progression where you like, who would have ever thought that now you have all these skills in content creation and podcast recording that came out of your recovery down this road. Now you're creating this new business. It's
totally. I mean, if I were to
like those threads.
Yeah. If I were to like whiteboard the timeline, you could just hit all these things that led to this, that led to this, that led to this. It's really cool. Really cool. I love the statement, this will all make sense later. I bring that up a lot because there's a lot of younger generations I work with. I've got a bunch of nephews. Obviously, I have my own daughter. Like they're going through tough times. Things happen, and I'm like, and I hate saying this will all make sense later, but I do say it, and I explain why, and I use examples of my own life. And it's really cool to look back at all the times that I was like, God, what is this? This sucks. Oh my God, what a shift in life and identity and direction. What am I going to do? And it's like, if that didn't happen, then I wouldn't be where I am now. And I'm pretty happy with where I am now.
Yeah, I have so many of those. Like, what am I doing? And then like, well, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't know how to do this next thing. It's a better version of everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Much more like, okay, you're going to be all right. Kind of, it makes it a little more positive, I think.
Yeah.
Was exactly you said this will all make sense later?
Yes.
I think that's a good book title.
Just trust me, this will all make sense. For
my memoir. When I was drinking, I thought my memoir would be called well, that didn't work.
Well, oh, that's good. I love it.
I still knew there would be a memoir. I just didn't know. It just wasn't as positive.
The identity stuff it's a great question though, because so many people that are entering recovery or sobriety or just any kind of change, man, that's I mean, that there's some serious guidance that people can use with that. I mean, identity shifts inevitably happen. We just talked about it. How many times my direction changed in my life and I was panicked and uncomfortable and oh my God, but this is not who I am. I mean, how many times have I said that? That's not me. This isn't who I am. Sorry. You're going to change throughout your life. And that identity piece, when people have to, eliminate substances, it is tough. It's a tough identity shift.
Yeah, there's a long period of time where you're just like, what the hell? Like this is, and then it sort of all comes together. Hopefully.
Right. I mean, you kind of start, it's interesting that and I don't know, I'm just going off the top of my head now, but when you are wrapped up in higher levels of addiction, where you are using pretty much all the time. Maybe not, 24/7, like a full blown rock bottom type situation, but like a, pretty functioning where you're looking back a year or two and you kind of don't remember everything. And it's like, everything's a little hazy. Then when you have to give it up, it's like, man, I'm not even sure who I am. Like all those years are all wrapped up in either being hungover or looking forward to the next time, which may be a couple days. It's just all is wrapped up in that. And then when that goes away, it's like, man, there's this clean slate.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I now? And that
Terrifying.
that can be terrifying, and it can also be exciting. I mean, if you have the right guidance and the right coach, it can be exciting. It's like now you get to recreate yourself.
Mm-hmm. When I got sober, I read that you revert to the age you were when you started drinking, which for
I've
me,
seen that.
you said 13, for me it was 14. I was like, oh God, like who wants to be 14?
Oh God.
And I felt a little bit like unprepared. And I feel like I've caught up now to my actual well, no, I don't think I'll ever catch up.
Right. I was
35.
a little
I'm like,
behind where I should be. Yeah. Kicking and screaming on the ground, like having like temper tantrums.
Exactly. I was though. It's true. So this leads into our last question. We always ask our guests, our motto at After Magazine is the best life begins after saying goodbye to alcohol. How would you characterize your after?
Oh man. Golly, the long, long, long list. There's two categories. There's external and there's internal. Obviously external, after you clean up all the path of destruction, relationships begin to, rebuild and rekindle and amends and new relationships, new genuine authentic relationships begin to develop. And for me, my now wife was my girlfriend at the time when I quit drinking, and I just can't imagine what kind of relationship we would have if I was still under the influence, and maybe not the way that I was in the end, but just to any degree. I just and I don't like to say that too black and white, because there are plenty of people out there that drink that have fabulous relationships. So it's not that it does that every single time. It just means that for me, alcohol changed me to a way that my relationships were not very authentic. I was very self-centered. I was very just shifted around and thinking internally and very much agenda oriented. So I didn't have great relationships. So that's number one. Relationships to me are kind of everything. It's wonderful to have support. It's wonderful to have romance. It's wonderful to have brotherhood, sisterhood, fatherhood. I got a brother, I got a mother, I got cousins, and we all love each other. And that is exciting and really cool for me. And it makes me feel whole. So that's part of the external piece. The internal is the other. And it's holy cow, like how long I battled low self-esteem, low confidence, no value. You're not worth anything, all those kind of feelings coupled with inner voice. It wasn't always me saying that to myself, but it was often me just feeling it. And the feeling was very sluggish and scared little, just nothing. Nobody wants to hear from me, just all that stuff. And as soon as I gave up the thing that I was a slave to, I can't reiterate that I realize this is not the way it is for everybody, but for me, that's what alcohol did to me. It took away my sense of self, and it took away my authentic relationships. And as soon as I got rid of that in my life, those two things began to flourish.
That's so beautiful. It's like I feel that in my heart. That's amazing.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, yeah. How fortunate to find that and have that experience and that transformation.
Totally. Totally. Now, if we could just get people to not have to go so deep to have those changes in their lives, then we'd get it figured out.
It's really wonderful. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Here chatting with me and being on the cover of our magazine.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. First cover for me.
Wonderful. That's great. Congratulations.
Yeah, no problem. I was on the front of the Charlotte Observer, the front page of the Charlotte Observer about a year ago. That was the first front I'd ever been on. This will be the first cover. Very exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to talk to you. We'll talk again.
Of course.